You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as a Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. Guest hostess Jessica Baldo Riggio and myself had a really good time interviewing Anthony Anselmi, Master Sommelier and founder of Occam Wine Company. He brings decades of global wine experience to curating and representing some of the most dynamic boutique producers in the world. His passion lies in connecting people to meaningful wines and in the mentoring of the next generation through his signature Anselmi method of deductive tasting. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Anthony, welcome to Served Up. Me and Jessica are so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited too.
Absolutely. Can you tell our listeners what piqued your curiosity for wine? Where did you get your start? Let's take it way back. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the vineyards?
I grew up in the Bay Area, and there was actually a famous picture of me that was myth for many years until I actually was about to be a parent, and we had a baby shower. And I realized this myth story of me on my second birthday drinking scotch wasn't actually myth. My mother produced a picture of me sitting in my godfather's lap drinking a tumbler of whiskey. And she was not very happy about that because apparently I couldn't blow out my candles. So I suppose my start to the wine industry started on my second birthday.
God, you were like born just pickled and well preserved.
Pretty much.
Okay.
That led me college and high school waiting tables, washing dishes, bussing tables, led me to, help support my life as a college student, as a high school student. And after college, the job market wasn't very good. So I started working in nicer restaurants, and the side work that came along with being a waiter eventually led me to an opportunity from a manager at a restaurant in San Francisco where he asked if I wanted to put away cases of wine instead of polishing glassware. And that's really the first time that I think I was interested in wine before that. But I think one of the biggest challenges with wine is fear, and fear coupled with ignorance. And just being able to put away cases of wine and see the labels, I now knew what was on our wine list. I didn't know what it tasted like, but I knew we had 4 Bordeauxs, we had 2 Burgundies, 5 California Merlots, and that was sort of the launching pad into actually starting to ask more questions about wine itself.
Anthony, I'm picturing you. Can totally relate, right? Like looking at the boxes, looking at the labels. Where does it go? So if you're working in that restaurant, you're the manager. Did you say, okay, now I'm ready. I'm going to dedicate my life to wine, or like now I'm going to study wine? Like you're just like, I'm putting away boxes. Like how did it lead you to where you are today? I feel like we got part 1. Now it's part 2.
Yeah, part 1, I mean, gosh, I was just a waiter. I wasn't a manager there. That was 96. So I was 26 years old, 27. Had no idea what I was going to do with my life, because being a politician and an attorney, which is what I thought I was going to do, seemed like it was not going to happen. I was just enjoying being a mid-20s shithead and learning about wine. And then I ran into an old manager who was opening up a new restaurant in San Francisco called Farallon, which was kind of a big deal back then. So I opened up Farallon, and for the first time I worked at a restaurant that had a full-time somm, a guy named Peter Palmer. And we had weekly wine classes, and I got to fill in as the floor somm every once in a while when he was on vacation. So really, for the first time, got immersed into a community of wine and just thought it was super fun. I get to put on a tie and not wear my uniform sometimes. And then after a couple of years, I moved to Los Angeles to pursue a different dream, which was acting, which I never was very good at or showed any signs of it being a lifelong journey. I was just, I was in my late 20s. I didn't know what the hell to do. So I moved to Los Angeles and worked with my second mentor, who was Chris Miesky at Patina in Los Angeles. That was 99. And in 99 in Los Angeles, there was exactly 2 full-time wine positions. It was Mike Bonacorsi at Spago, and it was Chris Miesky at Patina. If you wanted to be in the wine business in 1999, one of those guys had to leave their job for you to get that. Otherwise, you could be a manager somm or, one of these hybrids. But if you look at Los Angeles today, I'm guessing there's 50, 100 people that are full-time somms. And back then there was 2. We used to joke, one of my distributors in Southern California is a guy that I worked with at Patina. And we used to blind taste each other on wines because at Patina, it was our policy that we tasted every bottle of wine before we served it. We had very strict rules. You couldn't open it at the table. You had to open it on your side mise en place. You tasted every bottle, regardless of whether it was brought in or purchased off the list. And so you take a little taste and sometimes share it with somebody else. And my buddy David would come up and, blind taste me on a white wine. And you're like, okay, it's Chardonnay. I think it's Burgundy, probably Meursault. And our running joke was, well, all we sold was Cocherie and Comte Lafon. So you had a 50-50 chance. Because in 99, there was really only a handful of full boat programs. So that was a tremendous experience, being able to work with a 2,000 selection wine list. And I got to taste everything that I poured. Someone brought in 61 Aubryon Magnum. I got to taste it. After being there for a couple of years, I went to another restaurant that didn't really have a wine director. And they asked me if I wanted to take that program over. And that was really the first time where it started to pivot to a career. And I went and took an intro course in Vegas with the Court of Master Somms. And after that, 9 months later, I took the advanced exam, which at that time you could do, you can't anymore. And I was kind of off and running, got a job in distribution, and then worked for Kermit Lynch, managing Southern California for 7 years. Passed the Master Somm exam in 2011, became national sales manager for the Rare Wine Company for 8 years. And then 6 years ago, started my own business, which is somewhat based on a similar model that importers in the United States have, which is I'm going to manage this amount of wineries across the country. Well, for me, instead of doing that, I'm not managing imports. I manage 5 domestic wineries across the globe, and 4 from California and 1's from Oregon.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Was that something like, how did that happen for you? And what did that moment look like when you were able to bring, something of your own, right? You created something out of nothing. And I always admire entrepreneurs. I think that it's amazing. And so what did that moment look like for you when you formed your own company? You're able to do everything on your own and you became a master sommelier. And we can't just gloss over that, Anthony. You're very humble, super humble. Let me tell you. I would also like to take it back just a moment for folks that maybe aren't hip to what that term is, because we are an international show. Not everybody's in the beverage industry. And they might be a little bit curious, well, what is a master sommelier? What does that mean?
God, I think it means different things to different people. If I may, effectively, there's 2 different organizations in the wine world that offer a credential that puts you at the pinnacle of knowledge, whatever you want to call it. It's the Master of Wine and the Master Sommelier. And the Master of Wine is more theoretically based. It is geared more towards winemakers and wine writers. And the Master Sommelier exam, while also incredibly intensive for theory, there's also a service application where you have to be able to work service on a floor and understand what that means. The dynamic is a little different. I think the level of respect that I have for MWs is equal to MSs. It's just it's a basketball player versus a football player, if you will. Both are hard gigs and they serve somewhat different needs. And there's, I think, 3 freaks of nature that are both MW MSs, which is a whole different level of pain. It takes a long time to do. You got to know a lot. You got to get a little bit lucky and you have to be resilient. And I was able to do it at a time in my life when I didn't have a wife, a girlfriend, kids, a mortgage, and I'd been working a pretty good gig for about 3 years. So life was somewhat stable and I was able to dedicate a good amount of time to passing the different parts of the exam.
Very cool. And then take us through what that moment was like when you really created your own company and your own gig in the wine world, really kind of taking all that knowledge and passion. And I know you wanted to be an actor at one point, but oh, well, look at you created something cool. So let's talk about it.
It's a really interesting question because it was born out of a failure. I spent 7 years working for Kermit Lynch, and then I went to the Rare Wine Company and I worked there for 8 years. And Kermit Lynch recruited me to come back and work for them to take over their California distribution. And after 6 weeks, it kind of became clear that it wasn't going to work out. It was a lesson that I learned that it's very difficult to go back in life and put on the same hat that you had at a different period of your life for both Kermit and for myself. So after a couple months, I was out of a job. My wife had just, she was actually in Massachusetts. She's got some nerve issues and she was undergoing a surgery for that. And all of a sudden I got 2 young kids and no job and a mortgage and a wife that's disabled. And it was time to figure out what I was going to do with my life. So it was a rough time. It was August of 2019. It's not the best time to be looking for a job because the wine industry is just about to get busy, right? In September, October, November, December are the busiest months in the wine business. So finding a job with 2 weeks notice, kind of a tough thing. It was very specialized in geeky imported wines at a very high level. And there's not a lot of those gigs around. So after bouncing around for a couple of months and talking to a couple different friends that I respected in the business, in one day, 2 different buddies of mine said, why don't you just do your own thing? I remember saying to them, I don't want to own a retail shop. I don't want to own a restaurant. What do you mean do your own thing? And they're like, why don't you just, handle distribution for a handful of people instead of just working for, insert huge importer or insert huge winery that can pay me the salary that somebody that has 20 years experience should get, et cetera. And I called my wife and said, what do you think? And she was like, yeah, maybe. And then I called a buddy of mine and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing where I handle a few different wineries and cover their distribution. And he said to me, you should call. And I said, who? And he said, you should call Chris Cherry at Via Creek because he needs some help. And I was talking to Chris Cherry at Via Creek, who I work with now, managing his global distribution. My wife called back an hour later and said, oh my God, I just talked to Will and Callie. They need you. They want to hire you right away. And there you go.
It was meant to be, Anthony. You know what? You took your shot, right?
Wow.
You stepped in
I
and
would
you
never have
stepped
done
up.
it. It wasn't a dream of mine. I thought I was going to work for Rare Wine Company or Kermit Lynch for the rest of my life because the wines were great. I, for the most part, got along with the management, and it never really occurred to me to do my own thing.
No, you know what? It never does. I think a lot of times when our paths kind of take an unexpected direction, that magic can happen. Look, I thought that I was going to maybe be a groupie or just be a manager of a vinyl store and just smoke my joints and listen to Zeppelin. Look at me now. So you just never know.
Well, judging by the guitars on your wall, I'm guessing that you are listening to a little bit of Zeppelin, and I won't pass judgment on the joints.
You can. It's fine. I'm an OG of all those things.
Anthony, I'm curious about starting your own business, right? Like, yes, you had to take the leap of faith. Yes, we all believe in timing, but how is it running a business and on your day to day, like, the numbers and all that stuff? But, how do you feel about it? No regrets? What are we, 5, 6 years in? You have 6 domestic wineries now. Like, how do you feel about it?
I feel great about it. I really don't think I would have ever done it. I think I was too scared to do something like that. I never, a friend of mine moved to Costa Rica about 20 years ago, and he said the reason that I succeeded in Costa Rica is because my tolerance for risk was extremely high. And I did not have that much tolerance for risk after I started my wine career because I felt like I'd screwed around for enough time that I kind of needed to buckle down. But once it happened, I just realized it's not dissimilar from the jobs that I had with the other importers that this sounds a little snarky, but I don't think most people are very hard. I don't think most people work hard, and I'm a hard worker, so that gives me an advantage. I'm not really willing to fail, so that gives me an advantage. And all of a sudden, you put me out in a situation where I can have, these 5, 6 wineries that trust in me completely, especially after a period of a couple months, and just go, oh my God, thank God I've got Anthony because he can handle all of this. And because he has 5 wineries, I don't have to pay him insert crazy amount of money for a winery that makes 1,000 cases of wine. It's just a part of the business that a lot of people don't realize that if you're not making $2 million selling $2 million worth of wine a year, you can't afford to hire somebody that knows what they're doing. So what do? You hire somebody that you take a risk on, or you do it yourself. And if you do it yourself, most winery owners, winemakers don't do a very good job because they're busy with other stuff. And if you hire a 28-year-old schmuck that, has been flipping burgers for 5 years, it's a short language, Jessica, that you and I can speak. And sometimes you just forget that you know the language.
I always talk about the hustle, right? Like, same thing. I've been in this industry for 24 years, and I'm always like, God, the things I did all these years and still do, but just in a different way or different capacity. And it's just working hard. It's not that difficult. It's just a lot of hard work. So I commend you for that. I have another question about the wineries that you've chosen. Did they choose you, or are you really selective on who you want to work with? And then can you talk about them individually?
Yeah, it morphs. At first, it was really, I need a job. And it came, 2 of the first 3 wineries came as a result of existing friendships, people that we knew well that were in the wine industry that needed help. I liked their wines. I respected them as winery owners, winemakers, etc. And one of them came to me via a connection from like two steps away. So all 3 of them kind of started at the same time. That was Lola from Calistoga, Via Creek from the west side of Paso, whom I still work with, and Lumen from Santa Maria Valley, whom I still work with. Lola hit a point a couple years back where they needed a full-time person, and we decided it was a good opportunity for them to find that, but that now that I had started my own thing, I wasn't ready to work for somebody else, if you will. I look at my relationships now with the wineries as they're technically clients, not employers. And I look at it as it's like living with roommates, right? So I'm not living with parents. They're not living with parents. Like we have mutual respect for the space that we exist in, and we all have jobs to do. As things have gone over time, there's been other producers where I've been introduced to them or they've approached me, and many times it didn't work for one reason or the other. I've been fortunate enough now where I can't really handle more than a handful of wineries. It's just, I don't have anyone else that works for me. There are other people that do what I do that have 25 wineries and 5 people that work there, but I want to be my own ship, if you will, and do everything. So it's really a limit of what I can handle. So 2 years ago, I started working with Vice Versa from the Napa Valley, which has been around for about 20 years, started by a Quebecois man named Patrice Breton, who started working with Paul Hobbs. Then Paul Hobbs made his wines, and Atelier Melka now makes the wines. So we've been working together for just about 2 years. Then about a year ago, I started working with a winery out of the Santa Rita Hills called Mail Road. It's they source fruit from the second vineyard that was planted in the Santa Rita Hills, which is called Mount Carmel, which is directly across from Sanford and Benedict, which is the first vineyard planted in the Santa Rita Hills. And the message resonated really well. The history of the vineyard. I had also recalled when I started talking to them, I went, wait, Mount Carmel. I think I had a 99 Rick Longoria Mount Carmel Chardonnay. And I don't remember a lot of domestic wines from the 90s. I remember mostly imports. Is this the same vineyard? And the owners were like, yeah, Rick Longoria, Brian Babcock, and Greg Brewer all made the first vintages until Mail Road Winery was started in 2012. So that came through my wife's old boss. Somebody had reached out to them. So just sort of happenstance, good reputation. And then recently, in the last 5 months, I've been working with a new winery for me out of Oregon called Rose and Arrow. Rose and Arrow is a project that Mark Tarloff started when he left Evening Land. Sourced from, it's a Pedro Parra project. If you don't, do you know who Pedro Parra is?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. He came to visit us in Florida. And I was like, did you play in the dirt when you were a kid? Like, where did you come up with what you do? And he was very interesting, and my team loved him. Yeah.
Yes, he's awesome. So Rose and Arrows of Pedro Parra. He went there and dug soil pits and all that stuff. So we source grapes from, we have 150 acres of vineyards, but we only use 5 for Rose and Arrow because there's only 5 that have the dirt that he wants after digging 100 soil pits. And that's led to a side project with Rose and Arrow called Atomic 3, which is Pedro Parra, Felipe Ramirez from Rose and Arrow, and Jean-Marc Rouleau.
Amazing. What's one question that clients should ask you, but rarely do?
Oh, God. The first thing that I want to say is, do you know what you're doing?
It's a good question.
Because most of the time when I start working with a winery, there's so much that is not being done that is so obvious for somebody like me. I'm sure, like, if I took Jessica and put her in this same role, she would be able to see many of this same. I mean, she just is on a different side of the phone, but it's the same conversation, right? Like, how often do you talk to your distributor? Do you get depletions? Do you look at the depletions? It's a surprising lack. It's not a lack of ability to see the business. It's a lack of time to be able to dedicate to the craft of working wholesale.
Anthony, have you ever said no to somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a variety of reasons, whether it was, earlier on, there was a producer that came to me that had inexpensive wines and they just weren't my cup of tea as much. Then there's been higher end projects where there was one project where they wanted me to sign an NDA just to talk to them. And I thought, no, I understand you don't want me to tell people what your sales are and things like that. But part of what's happened as a result of me doing this for 6 years is I'm quite close to all of the people that I work with, and everyone has different needs. I talk to some people once or twice a day and some people, once every couple months. But understanding and developing those relationships when you have only 5 is super important. So the personal relationship with the people when you meet them, if it just doesn't feel like there's a level of respect, then it's not going to work.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're very domestic focused, right? So
Only domestic.
Only domestic.
I won't do imports.
Okay. I was going to say, considering the world that we're living in these days, it sounds like you will only stay domestic. How do you feel about the future of wine and where we are these days? Like, take off your business cap and just talk about wine in general.
I mean, I should also mention that I spent 25 years focused on imports. You know, my heart still lives partially there, but for the realities of how I run my business, I don't want to be an importer. That's a big change in model. So I'd rather deal with domestic for a couple of reasons. One of them is the logistics. It's just easier to deal with domestic wine in the US. And that's mostly what I do is the US. The state of wine right now, you know, oh, the kids aren't drinking. There's too many producers. There's consolidation of distributors. And I've lived through bumps in the market before. It's like raising kids. You know, you think, oh, wow, they're not shitting their pants anymore. I've made it to the next level. Yeah, then they turn into assholes. So it's constantly learning. It's constantly working hard. You have to work hard in order to succeed. And the fact that there's so many people trying to sell wine right now, trying to make wine, at the end of the day, you just got to put one foot in front of the other. I'm not going to exit the business because, you know, 22-year-olds aren't drinking anymore. And I would also say to the people that complain that 22-year-olds are not drinking as much as we did, that's probably not a bad thing, right? It is my business, but I'm not going to complain that fentanyl deaths are down. Drinking responsibly is a big thing, and it's a big thing in our industry. The future of our industry, I don't know. I don't know how much the things we drink may change, but I really feel like this is a relationship that the world has had for thousands of years. It's not going to end because one generation can't get off fucking TikTok.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Put that on a shirt. Is that cool with you?
Yes.
I love it. No, I really love it. Is there a wine that you've worked with that just completely surprised you?
In my life?
Yeah.
Not really. It's sort of like the running joke of the wine business is the most common question you get asked is, what is your favorite wine? And it's not that it's not a valid question. It's just that it's like me going up to a famous actor, music. It's like me going up to Robert Plant and being like, I'm such a fan. Like, yeah, okay, fuck, I've heard that.
Right.
Like, is there anything original you can say? So it's not that any one wine has changed me. It is that wine continues to reframe my expectations. As somebody that spent 25 years in imported wines, I was very much a champion of the old world. And I have been humbled and have had some wines in the last 6 years from the new world that that have changed my perceptions. And my wife has been the first one to laugh at me and who I was and who I am because of how dogmatic I was.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've seen the other side of the coin and I've been humbled.
Yeah. Yeah. How has climate change showed up in any of your conversations with the producers or any of your clients? Is that a conversation that folks are having?
Always. Yeah. It's all over the place. And who knows how it'll play out. I remember back in the day working with Daniel Ravier from Domaine Tempier, and he was doing a tasting in Los Angeles. Domaine Tempier is in Provence, in Bandol, in France. And he was saying that the greatest expression of a grape variety in the Northern Hemisphere is at the very northern end of where it can ripen. So that if it can struggle just enough and yet achieve ripeness, that's where you're going to get the greatest expression. Just at that point where you have to struggle still, but you still get ripeness for a particular varietal. This was almost 20 years ago. And him saying, I don't know if the future of Mourvèdre is going to be Bandol because it's getting warmer, that northern limit is going up. So maybe it's going to have to be something else here, or maybe Mourvèdre will be better in insert Northern Rhone, whatever. So those questions are certainly out there. Burgundy, especially red Burgundy today, isn't what it was 20 years ago. Most producers don't chaptalize their red Burgundy anymore, but that was really common 20 years ago. I mean, if you look at California, interestingly, really the only reason that we can make wine in California is because of the Pacific Ocean, because technically we're at the wrong latitude. We're only at about 35 in Santa Barbara, where Beaune, France is at 47. So we get a lot more sunshine. We get a lot more exposure to UV. Theoretically, that should make the wines riper, richer, rounder, and it does. But it's the proximity to the very cold Pacific Ocean that allows us to make wines there. So if the temperature of the Pacific Ocean is increasing, that decreases our ability to make wines of balance in California.
That's really interesting. I think that that's such a hot topic right now. I'm glad that, you gave us a little behind the scenes.
I don't think most people outside of California realize how cold the Pacific Ocean is. They just see like people with their shirts off and bikinis playing at the beach. No one really plays in the water in California because it's too cold.
The opposite of Miami. The water is like a bath.
Exactly. And I think people look at Florida and California in many ways that aren't from these states, and they're like, one's East Coast, one's West Coast. I've been to Florida. The water must be the same out there. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Anthony, can you tell our guests where they can find you?
They can't. I am not on social media.
Look at you, Anthony. Now we have a whole nother podcast we have to do with you. Why are you not on social media? Can I ask?
I would ask.
Good for you.
Why would you be on social media?
I'm not on social media.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I'm not on social media either. You guys.
No.
I mean, people sometimes say I should be because it's good for whatever, but I think it was 10 years ago, I was on Facebook every night for like 45 minutes flipping through, and I just went, this is I'm not seeing enough cool stuff in here for me to do this. This is definitely an addictive behavior, and I don't want to be part of it.
There you go.
So you can find me at occamswineco.com, which is my website that's under construction, but should be done soon. Or you can come visit me. I live at 6,000 feet in Truckee, California.
Very wonderful. Anthony, I want to thank you so much for coming on Served Up and chatting with Jessica and myself. And I just want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace. Cheers to you.
Thanks, Bridget. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.